Good afternoon. My name is Paulina Białek, and I'm a Business Development Director at Expara, Singapore Venture Capital Fund. Today, we are hosting Radana Stefekova, Maciej, Plichta, and Michał Rokosz. Thank you very much for accepting my invitation. I'm very happy, especially that Radana is with us because she lives in France, and it would not be possible for her to join us. But thanks to the live stream, she's with us today. So, as Dada said 20 minutes ago, every crisis creates danger, but also opportunity, and I really believe that this is one of them. So again, thank you very much, and please shortly introduce yourself. Radana, maybe you can start.
Hi, Paulina. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Radana. I come from startup and investment background. I worked for 5 years in startups, launching and running ventures in emerging markets and in Europe. Later, I worked with a European CVC, investing into early stage startups in deep tech from Germany, Austria, and Switzerland. And at the moment, I'm helping corporates to develop and implement their investment strategies. And in my free time, I'm supporting startups, coaching them on fundraising topics.
Thank you very much. Maciej, maybe you can do the introduction now.
Hi, sure. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Paulina, for invitation to this panel. It's cool to be here, and it's first of such an opportunity to speak in a virtual panel. As for myself, I've been working in a few VC funds in Polish market for the last couple of years, and now in an international corporate venture capital fund established by German utility company called Innogy, Innogy SE. And I'm looking for interesting startups to invest into and helping our portfolio company to grow. As a global CVC, we are headquartered in Europe, present in Israel and UK and the US, and we are looking for companies to shape the future of energy and utility industry.
Thank you very much. Michał?
Hi, everyone. Hi, Paulina. I'm Michał Rokosz. I'm a partner at Inovo Venture Partners. I used to be working in digital companies, Foodpanda and Booksy, for over 4 years in total. And right now I'm supporting these kind of companies as an investor. Our first fund was only 8 million, so it was a micro VC. The one we recently closed is 40 million euros. We're mostly investing in Central Eastern Europe. However, recently we closed a deal that is only targeting US. So we can be flexible, but our presence and focus is here in Central Eastern Europe.
Okay, thank you very much. So everybody likes talking about success, and it's especially very important for venture capital funds, as we have to find limited partners and co-investors, and finally startups to convince them that we offer the biggest value, to convince that they should take the money from us, and so on. But the fact is, according to many statistics, that 70% of startups fail. Why do we invest mostly in the companies that fall down? What's the reason, and whose fault it is? How can we learn from our mistakes? And maybe it's possible to decrease the number of failures we gather in our portfolios. These are the questions that we will try to find the answers for during this discussion panel. Radana, the first question goes to you. What are the typical investor mistakes along the investment process you encountered?
Thanks, Paulina. So if we look at the investment process, we could roughly divide it into 3 parts. The first part being the deal sourcing, the second one is the due diligence and the actual deal making, and the third part is being the portfolio management, actually the investment management of your portfolio company. So each of these parts are equally important for the successful investment journey. And from my point of view, obviously there are mistakes happening in each of these parts. From my point of view, I would probably talk about the mistakes I encountered in the first and second phase. It means in the deal sourcing and in the due diligence the investors typically make. So talking about the deal sourcing, I mean, efficient deal sourcing is really crucial for a fund. The best investors have figured out how to do it. And for example, Y Combinator really took it into perfection with their startup school, where they cooperate together with hundreds of thousands of entrepreneurs already from the stage of ideation. But not everyone is so smart or has been able to develop such a great sourcing pipeline. And typically the mistake I have encountered, especially with small VCs, is that they tend to, I would say, not utilize the co-investment networks as much as they could. It means they don't really develop and they don't really invest enough time and efforts into building up reliable and trusted connections with potential co-investors. More than 80% of the deals from Series A onwards are happening as co-investments. So it's absolutely crucial to be present in the investment environment and to dedicate enough time and efforts to have a trusted partner who is going to loop you in when a nice deal lands on his or her table. So I think this is one of the mistakes which the VCs make, that they tend to kind of perceive the investors more like their competitors than partners. If I turn it around, it's really important for startups to understand that investors talk. Right? It's really important to be consistent in the communication, in the message you are sending as a startup, because investors, they are really interested to know the kind of point of view of another expert investor. So that's like one of the mistakes I would think of. And another one in the due diligence process, sometimes I think that investors could really speed up and they could really inform startups about their negative answer. So as soon as the investor knows that I am not going to pursue this investment route, I'm not going to participate, it's important to let the startup know. The reason for it is that all of the startups are really short on time when it comes to the funding rounds, and it's absolutely crucial for them to move quickly, to learn from the mistakes they made within this pitch or whatever communication they had with investor, and move on to the next one in order to succeed. So I think those are the 2 points I would point out. There are much more many we could talk about for hours, I suppose.
Sure. So Maciej, referring to what Radana said, investing is not so easy, and funds are making many mistakes that they later regret, like ineffective sourcing. You represent the utility company for which startup investment is quite new. Why Innogy SE, as a corporate, decided to launch a fund?
Yeah, it might not be so obvious for corporates to launch regular CVC activities. And actually, it was not easy and obvious for us as well. So when the Innovation Hub started already 6 years ago, Innogy decided to innovate because of the changes, so-called mega trends in the energy market. So trends including decarbonization, democratization of energy production, digitization of the utility industry. After the crisis in Fukushima, it saw that innovation is crucial in order to increase our competitive advantage on the market and to create new revenue streams for the whole group. That's why in the beginning, we thought we might innovate from within ourselves. It means we decided to start venture development activities. So we were hiring managers, we were looking for projects. Those managers were given tasks to develop companies, but still it was from within the organization, and Innogy was the core owner of those projects, and the management teams were just managers, naturally founders. And after a lot of time, energy, and effort being put into that, we saw results that were not satisfactory for us. And after all, it's difficult to innovate within, it's difficult to disrupt your business within the business. And that's why we changed into a model for investing into so-called external expert teams in innovation called on the market startups. And we became a regular CVC fund, investing cash for minority equity interest and helping the startups from our portfolio to grow. And this brings much more relevant results and help us also to identify opportunities which we couldn't find from within our organization. It's been going so far quite good, and we are looking into more opportunity into the future.
Just wait a second, I will ask you about the failures, but now I would like to move to Michał. Michał, you have just raised the second fund. You've been on the market for many years, and everybody knows Booksy. But what about the other startups that failed? What have you learned from the fuck-up stories?
So I think first thing in a VC, it's not really about the failures. It doesn't matter if investing in 15 companies, you get 12 failures or 10 or 8. It really doesn't matter. It matters whether you have the one winner that will make time 40 times 50 and that's it. But obviously, like in our first portfolio, out of 15 investments, 5 didn't go as planned or maybe even worse. What we learned is we underestimated how important is the team versus the market and the product. So we typically assumed, okay, you have a very good market, you have a product with traction, the team still doesn't have all the competencies, etc., but we will coach them, we'll help them out, we'll hire somebody else, etc. And it never worked. So right now in our core learning from the first fund is basically you really need to understand the founding team well. And for example, we didn't do enough background checks. That's something we learned later on for the companies that didn't went so well, that if we had spoken to their prior investors, we would have learned what can actually happen, because these guys had a history of not delivering, so to say. And I think this is the core learning we have, that if you spend time analyzing the company and you have a certain number of hours to be invested, it's just better to spend them with the founders, ideally in a non-pitching setup. So if you can make an event where you problem solve or you have a joint discussion, etc., and see them in a different setting, that's a perfect case. Obviously, one other learning is really looking into people they already hired, because one of the good predictor whether the startup will be successful is if they can really hire strong people that bring additional expertise. So like I would say the most important part of our due diligence now is spending 1-2 days on the ground in the company, talking to many people, understanding the culture, getting additional opinions on how they see the founders and how the things are structured. And I can tell you, the minute you come into the office, you learn a lot more about the company than in the just a meeting the founder, etc., how it's organized. And it's the little things, but it kind of gets into the full picture.
Thank you very much, and I completely understand you, Michał, because we have the same attitude towards founders. We definitely value founders the most, and this is actually the biggest the biggest point that we consider when we are considering investment or not. So like the team really matters. And what about you, Maciej? What about the failure stories you have in your portfolio, how it happened, and maybe what you would like to improve?
Yeah, I can only Yeah, I can only agree with what Michał has just said about founders being the core value for determining the success of a startup. And I can also share one interesting case with the founding team of our Israeli startup, where founders were very good, the product seemed promising. It was a startup for construction tech, Contech, and real estate industry. And it looked very promising. However, it turned out that business environment was not ready yet for the product. And despite very successful pilots, implementation for large scale was not possible. What the team did was having very early identified the issues and stopped the production and stopped spending money on this project more, and instead using technology that it had developed, it was a VR and AR technology, it looked for a different space for a pivot. What seems like a classical pivot was executed perfectly in this case, meaning most of the team was stopped, technology was being developed, new products were being searched for the market. And after 6 months of the pivot, company and founders came to us as investors and said, guys, we cannot do it anymore. This is some of the money we have left in the bank, and we decide to quit. And by this attitude, they showed that they are able to spot the problem very early. They are not afraid to say this is a failure and we were mistaken. And it's really important to understand this attitude that failure is something natural. Like also Michał said before, in a startup industry, a lot of companies and business idea will have either to fail or to pivot. And if you can identify it as early as possible and you can stop losses, then you can at the end win. And this founding team has opened doors to us when they come with their next product, next business opportunity. We'll be always happy to speak with them as we really highly value their business acumen. What's also important from the growth perspective is one thing is investment and the other is then growing and helping your startups is also very important from every VC perspective. And we've learned in our growth activities by connecting startups to various industry partners that it's crucial to identify whom you talk to. And we also have quite a funny use case where one of our team members spent a lot of hours, time and effort to talk to one of real estate service agencies, only to learn after all that these were not really relevant people to speak with. And this it seemed more like innovation training than real growth opportunity. So what you really need to understand when you help your companies is to decide and spot the most relevant people within the corporation or an organization who can really help and push things forward. And that's what we are trying to do next.
Thank you. And Radana, maybe you can also elaborate on that because you put a lot of effort into growth process as well. You work with startups not only on fundraising, but also growth. So maybe
That's
you can...
true. Yeah, I think the biggest challenge I'm seeing actually when working with startups which are scaling, which are in growth phase, is to how to put it, is to actually be able to absorb the growth as a leader, as a founder. If your company is doing well, if you actually achieve product market fit and you go beyond, suddenly you grow from a team of 5 people who are very close to you, who you totally aligned with, they know you very well, into a team of 50 people, let's say, within a very short period of time. Typically, when you look at the founders, they are lacking knowledge how to manage people. They don't really know how to manage complex teams, how to divide and oversee a larger number of employees. So that's, I think, the biggest kind of challenge the founders are facing after being able to identify the right growth strategy and after, in a phase to implement it. You have the right talent, you have enough money in your bank account to execute it. However, how do I do it as a founder? So I need to develop suddenly new set of skills. I need to suddenly put more structure and processes in place, start using new tools, and eventually let go and delegate into middle management within a very short period of time. So I think that's a challenge a lot of companies are going through, being able to scale from the perspective of management of your employees, of the talent within the company, who is supposed to deliver the results. Yeah.
Thank you very much. And Michał, now the question goes to you because you mentioned that you were involved in Booksy, and we know that you contributed a lot to their great success. You not only invested, but also helped with the growth. What about their expansion abroad? What could have been done better? How do you look at it?
Yeah, so basically, long story short was when we invested in Booksy, we saw a very good progress initially. And once we saw that, the founders were convincing us, okay, this is a playbook that is replicable. We know how to do it. It's kind of tested. So we decided, okay, let's put in more capital. Let's scale to many countries. We selected like 10 of countries, launched in 6. And once we started really growing, it turned out that the playbook was not so much tested and the actual growth model was not there and it still needed fine-tuning. And the minute we started multiplying it by 6, just the number of problems was way more. And the result was like 3 out of the 6 countries are not there anymore. We had to shut them down. We had to do a bridge round, which was almost flat on valuation. So for us as a VC, it's like probably 20% less in our shareholding at the very moment. And what we learned like 1 or 2 years ago, that in the business like Booksy, it's much more about building a scale in one single country, because then you have network effects. So the fact we spread into, like, Booksy is right now at 6 markets is actually an issue, given all these markets work, and it just doesn't make sense to close them anymore given the investment. But ideally, we would have like 1-2 markets only, and focus most of the resources there. What we actually do, I mean, we put all the money from investment into the American market, which is the highest potential, and the rest are just supposed to live on its own revenue. But if I would be able to turn back time, we would probably do a much slower expansion. And once we saw that US is getting traction, put all the effort into this particular market. The logic is, if you can win US, you will be able to either win or buy the ones who won the other markets in the long run, because you will be able to raise capital, etc. If you are not able to do US, then there are other markets to focus. But if you have chances to go for US, it's really worth to double down on that.
Thank you. Maciej, do you have similar experiences referring to your portfolio companies and their expansion abroad? Do you agree with Michał?
Yes, we can see, as for network effects, the same goes for partners and industry players that we partner with, and building this experience and vast network of expertise, industry players that as an investor, be it a financial VC or a corporation like ourselves, when you have this vast network and you can open relevant doors for your startups, it really speeds things up. And what we could have done differently, and maybe it's just building this and leveraging on our network even faster and in more deeper sense, meaning taking our startups and introducing them to relevant players also as early as possible, because once startup starts their design partnership, it can develop product much better and for a way that is relevant for industry player, which is very difficult to find if you're not talking to market.
And Radana, what do you think about it?
From my point of view, expanding in a new market is always a challenge. I totally agree with Michał that pushing one market and achieving a great market share might be the right way, especially in the US, where the market is very sufficient, is very big, and then going the M&A strategy in other markets. So that's a very, very good example and very well explained, I suppose. And well, from my previous experience, I worked in markets in Africa, and our company has operated in 13 countries. 13 countries had totally different strategies. So what worked in one country didn't work in another one. So it really needs a lot of efforts to adjust the strategy to the particular country and the particular market. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I definitely agree with all of you.
Maybe one thing, if I can add, if I can add one thing, what really worked out very well for us is to start working with regional branches of corporations, where when there is not so much competition and when there is implementation power, let's say in Central Eastern Europe, and then scale with that within that branch to other geographies. So it's also good for startups.
Okay, thank you very much. Unfortunately, we are running out of time. Many thanks to our great panelists, but also to our audience. Should you have any questions, feel free to reach us after the discussion panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Wow, that was rather interesting panel about investors' fuck-ups. You don't often hear about those. So we're moving along to Erdogashi yet again, who's an investment manager from E2E. So tremendously lucky that he has found the time to join us again. Hello from to the UK. So, well, he'll be talking about the extraordinary potential for startups. Extraordinary is my favorite word